Welcome back to the Relocation Rundown. I'm Aaron.
I'm Geoff.
And today we have Adam Osetek from Rhode Island to join us.
What were we saying about Rhode Island before? What do we know about Rhode Island?
It's the small state.
That's true.
Providence. Ocean.
Northeast. That's about it. I think that we've covered the basics of what I know about
That's it.
Rhode Island.
I'm done. I don't need to be here. I'm done.
I've been to Rhode Island, so I know.
Oh, I've never been there.
Yeah, I used to, my family used to vacation in Westerly, Watch Hill area.
Probably the closest coastal town to New York, so yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And we used to stay at Ocean House before it got its 5-star renovation. And
before Taylor Swift moved in next door, right, is exactly what happened, yeah.
Back when it was haunted and no TVs.
What's funny is they actually have a special, they don't really advertise, but they kind of do the Taylor Swift package where you kind of go out on the balcony, they give you a little tour of the area, they show you where her house is and all that. But it's silly because you can't drive into her driveway. In fact, it's the only, which house is hers because you come up the hill from the little carousel downtown. It's the only house that has a giant security guard standing like this in front of the gate. It's the only house.
Yeah. But it's also a historic house, right? Like it has a name and everything.
Yeah. I mean, it's a massive house with this giant lawn that just spills out into the ocean. But yeah.
We got ahead of ourselves there a little bit.
We did. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us where in Rhode Island you are?
Well, great. Well, thanks for having me, guys. Again, I'm Adam Osetek. I'm a founding agent here of Compass, Rhode Island. I was formerly with a smaller boutique brokerage here in Rhode Island, but Compass purchased us a few years back, and I became one of 3 founding agents. You know how that goes. Founding agents here in Rhode Island. Proud to be that. I take that with a lot of pride. Recently, in the past 3 years in a row, I've been RealTrend's top 1.5% agents nationwide. And born and raised in Rhode Island, besides a brief hiatus in Miami after college for 10 years or so. I'm in love with my home state. So I love helping people design their lifestyle around real estate in Rhode Island. I work with a ton of relocation. I work with a ton of people that are looking to invest in the area that are out of state. And I love the state. The state is amazing. It's 30 minutes from either direction. I currently live right outside of Providence. So I'm 5 minutes from a metro downtown, food hotspots, Ivy League colleges, arts and culture, all that. But in 30 minutes, I can be at the beach. And in 30 minutes, I can be at a winery with cows. And, under an hour, I'm in Boston. Under 3 hours, I'm in New York. So it's a really great place to be.
That's awesome. So where in Rhode Island did you grow up? Did you grow up where you live now?
Yeah, so I grew up in Cranston, Rhode Island, which is a suburb of Providence, where it's the second largest city in the state outside of Providence, the capital. And my wife and I moved to a bordering town right now called Johnston. We're even closer to Providence. And it's funny. We say in Rhode Island, anything after more than a 15-minute drive requires a lunch and a snack. Being where I am, it's pretty easy to get everywhere. From outside perspective, for me, got to go a half an hour to the beach. That's a long way.
So what do you like most about living in?
Well, Providence is just one of those really unique towns that can feel like a big city and all at the same time cannot. We have an Ivy League school here in Brown University. We have what I think the top art school in the country, Rhode Island School of Design. We have one of the top 5 culinary institutes in Rhode Island at Johnson & Wales. So, I tend to be more of a city guy. I love the ocean, grew up in the yachting community. So I have a little bit of that, but Providence offers, I think it's a mini New York and a mini Boston all in one. It'll feel like Boston with the history, with the cobblestone streets, but it can also feel a little New York-y with downtown vibes and, big high rises and local events. So, it's a great place to live. Lots of stuff to do, lots of unique characteristics based on what you're interested in.
And that sounds like a really nice blend of a lot of the things I like. I mean, I've said to Aaron and other guests, there aren't a lot of places that I've visited that I'm like, I could live there. beyond New York. New York is
Yeah,
such a unique
we're
space.
snobs, you
Yeah.
know? We're snobs.
Well,
Right.
my whole extended family is from the city, from New York City. And I always grew up saying I would love to live in New York. And now that I'm older and I appreciate where I live, I don't know if I could ever go to the craziness that is New York, because I feel like I get just enough of that vibe in downtown Providence.
You got to go check it out,
Yeah, I think
because
so.
Yeah.
I think that's like a really nice blend.
Yeah.
It's one of the things we like about where we are in Riverdale. It's like this urban suburban blend that we kind of get, where we're in the city in, you know, a few minutes, but
Yeah. But we're like a little enclave up here. And we're also like a college town too. We have Manhattan University. We have the University of Mount St. Vincent. Fordham University is not that far away. So how has Providence changed since you were a kid growing up there to now?
I mean, it's just been a cultural boom since, I grew up here in the late 80s, early 90s. It's been a cultural boom, especially post-pandemic. We've been able to attract a lot, post-pandemic produced the norm of remote working, right? You can work anywhere from your home. Maybe you have to go into the office a couple times, but it's created a unique situation here in Providence, or even the general area, because post-pandemic, you don't have to live in a big metro area anymore to have a metro job. I personally have done a ton of people moving out of Boston, let's say, to Providence, because it's a 45-minute, maybe max 30-minute train ride to Boston. So if I have to go to the office twice a week, I can live in Providence for half the price and still get to the office in the same amount of time it's going to take me to battle 30 minutes of traffic in Boston. The city has definitely changed. Obviously, since I was a kid, modern times, things grow, there's expansion. When I grew up, Providence was a very small city. And since then, we've built a lot of high rises. There's a lot of things to do. But since 2020, it's really become even more of a cultural hotbed, because we're bringing in people from other metro areas that otherwise would have supplied that somewhere else.
What kind of industries are in that part of Rhode Island that are drawing people who have to go to an office or maybe have to go somewhere for work?
Yeah, I mean, we're Hasbro is here, big toy company. So they do tons of engineering, tons of production, marketing. The CVS headquarters is right here, right outside of Providence. So CVS is attracting tons of people. Citizens Bank is here. We have a lot of tech in the gaming industry. I guess you would call it the casino gaming industry. We have huge businesses here in Providence that supply that, because Ivy League school Brown and Rhode Island School of Design were attracting up and coming doctors and research analysts and people that are teaching culture or just many different aspects of what Brown brings. And then we're bringing in artists, and we're bringing in lots of chefs. We have a huge hospital here, so we're bringing in new doctors, and Brown does research at those hospitals. So, everything that you can get in a bigger city is definitely here. Maybe a little less jobs, right? Because it's just not a big area, but it definitely will attract a lot of people. But again, like I said, we're getting people that are working in Boston at you name it company, and they're living in Providence because it's a 35-minute drive. They go to the office twice a week, and it's easy.
So are you finding that the buyer profile of the people relocating to not just Providence, but Rhode Island in general, are more of the young family, young professional? Or are
Yes.
you getting a lot of people towards the retirement life cycle who's getting out of the city? What's the main driver of relocations right now?
Very interesting question. We're getting the majority of them are at not necessarily the beginning of their professional career, moderately through their professional career, then be on their second or third company or job. And anywhere between that and just about the retirement age. I've done a lot of relocation along the coast for people that are retiring from New York City or DC or Philly or, other areas, because let's say I want to buy a 3-bedroom house on the beach with a view. Well, in I don't know, in California or in the Hamptons, that's going to cost me millions. We're here in Rhode Island, It's much closer to 1 million. So there's a lot to be said for that. But that beginning stages of people's career, they're maybe their second or third job, they're taking jobs, they're high in demand, and a lot of those jobs, like, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but like I said, a lot of these jobs are remote. So they're able to work in a place that they choose, but live somewhere that's a lot more accessible price wise.
Let's talk a little bit about what the housing inventory is like. Obviously, coming from New York, we're apartment living 9 times out of 10. Yeah, we work in an outer borough and there's single family, multifamily home options. But most of the time, 70% of our housing stock is what we call co op. And that's a unique New York City sort of thing. So, what are we dealing with if I'm coming to relocate to Rhode Island? I've never been there before. Am I expecting apartment style living or single family home?
We are predominantly single family home living, which is unique to the area because most other metro-ish areas have tons of high rises. We still do have those, but they're very few as opposed to New York City or Boston or Miami or DC. There's a lot more, like you said, co-ops, condos, apartment style living. Ours is a lot of single families. As an example, I had someone that was referred to me by a Compass colleague in Boston. They were looking at these beautiful loft style apartments in Boston, and their budget was $1 million to $1.5 million. And they were finding 2-bedroom loft style apartments with $2,000 a month HOA fees. And they said, they're just not satisfied with that. They'd like a little bit more of a traditional living setting. And I was able to find them a 4-bed single family on the east side of Providence, which is a beautiful area, for under their budget. So yes, we're to answer your question, it's majority single family and a lot less price than you would expect.
Can we dig down a little further there and talk about what average price points kind of look like?
Good question. So, everyone has their own budget, right? If I'm looking for a starter home in Providence, we're probably looking between 900 and 1.5 million. At the same time, we have beautiful suburbs right outside of Providence that offer really nice homes and nice neighborhoods, good schools, nice communities for very comfortably find a great home between 500 and 800,000. So the budget is probably much better than most other areas.
But we're still talking about probably a 500,000 on the low end to about $1 million to be comfortably in the average sale price.
$1 million is more than comfortable for most starter homes, yes.
New construction, what's that like in Rhode Island? Is there a lot of new construction? Is it more historic homes that you're buying? What's that kind of like?
That's an interesting question. Because we're one of the oldest regions in the country, we have the oldest set of homes in the country. And because it's also a very small area and the area was settled so long ago, we have a severe lack of vacant land. So there are new constructions, but not new dev like you would see in a lot of other places. Massachusetts has a ton of new dev. Even New York has a ton of new dev. They knock a building down, they build a building up. We just don't see that very often here. You do have newer homes, but we had a housing boom in the early 90s. So we see a lot of homes between the 50s and 1970, and then a little bit of a gap. And then 1990 to 2005 or so, we had a huge boom. Tons of people were moving here from Massachusetts in the early 90s. And we have a ton of homes that are newer, contemporary style, 90s style. And we have a ton of homes that are of really great quality, 50s and 60s. But really unique is that we have a lot of homes that have strong character that were built in the early 1900s or 1920s that have been easily modified and renovated to be modern, but still have a lot of the character that you really can't find many other places.
And what style construction do you think most of those older homes are? Are they dealing with colonials, or are they more kind of like a Hampton style? Does it feel like a Cape Cod? What's the feel?
Yeah, we have a ton of older colonials, a ton of older capes. Cape Cod style is very common here. For people that are relocating when they're retiring or they're getting older, we also have an abundant amount of single level ranches that were built with really strong construction quality in the late 50s, early 60s. I sell a lot of those. They're a really great price point. There's no stairs to climb. They're easy to renovate, and they're in really great neighborhoods. So we have a ton of single level ranches too.
Now, if I want to live my Gilded Age fantasy, where in Rhode Island do I have to be, and what's my price point for that?
Well, Newport first comes to mind because that's where they are. If you have a healthy budget, if your budget is not so
What's my healthy budget?
yeah, if your budget's not so healthy, we still have Gilded Age style homes in some of the suburbs, areas like Cranston and Bristol, Barrington, Warren, those areas sort of surround Providence along the coast. There are homes that do fit that criteria. But the real Gilded Age, those are in Newport. They're beautiful, beautiful homes, and they sell very quickly, even at a high price point, because there's just not many of them.
Now, you mentioned that there's a kind of burgeoning culture scene in Providence with food and arts and things like that.
Yeah.
Can you give us some of your top 3 favorite restaurants? I have to assume seafood's got to be big there.
How do I choose? I mean, we have James Beard Award winners operating in Providence. We have Michelin star restaurants here in Providence. Come to mind, a world famous Providence restaurant is Al Forno. They invented the grilled pizza. It's incredible. You've never had a pizza like it. I know I'm partial to New York City pizza. This pizza is totally different, but it's incredible. They put these little shredded, long shredded scallions on the top of the pizza, and it's out of this world. There's another restaurant. He's been huge in the food scene here in Providence, helping bring up young and upcoming chefs that have gone on to open a restaurant in Providence. There's a really well-known restaurant here in Providence called Nick's on Broadway. The owner, Derek, has been instrumental in bringing up some young upcoming chefs that have gone on to open their own restaurant in Providence. That's a really great restaurant. But we get new restaurants opening all the time. It's really, like I said, it's New York City-esque. Restaurants open, they're open for a few years, they do well. Unfortunately, fad wears out and a new great restaurant comes in. Those are a few, but I could give you a laundry list. It's really hard to pick. The Italian food here is amazing. We were voted best Italian food above Boston and New York City.
I heard.
When we travel, we avoid every Italian restaurant we can because we just are constantly disappointed outside of Providence with Italian.
All right, come to Arthur Avenue in the Bronx. We'll show you some Italian.
I mean, I've been to a lot of them. I've been to a lot. My family's from the city. I've been to a lot of them. I'm telling you, Providence does it. They really do.
Is there a misconception out there about Providence or Rhode Island that you would want to
clear up right now?
Yeah.
We're not all coastline. It's very easy for people in the real estate business or trying to promote Rhode Island to promote the coast. And as gorgeous as it is and as much coastline as we have, there's so much more that we have. We have an amazing metro area in Providence. We have art. We have culture. We have farms, we have wineries, we have a really great suburbs. People think that just because it's a really small state that it's boring and there's not a lot to do, but there's a lot packed into a state that takes me 45 minutes to go from one end to the other. So I guess, misconception is that we're small town mentality, but this is not, the Midwest farmland. My neighbors are maybe. Some people need all that space, but if you're looking for normal living where I have a community and a neighbor, it's not small town. We're not all just beach cottages. We have a ton to offer.
If money was not a problem, not an issue, where in Rhode Island would you live and what kind of house would you be in?
Well, considering my wife is behind me, I have to answer the question in the way that she would want me to. And that is, I can't imagine why I would do that. I would say, honestly, I would say as close to the beach as possible. A lot of people would say Newport, and as beautiful as Newport is, and not a knock on Newport, sorry, Newport. Once you're on that island, it kind of becomes very easy not to leave. And I don't know if I want to go down that road. So, we love Narragansett, actually. Narragansett is a really nice beach area in southern Rhode Island. They still have great schools for kids if you want that, but lots of different homes. We are mid-century modern focused people. And believe it or not, Narragansett does have a lot of that. So I would say, walking distance to a beach in Narragansett with a little bit of land and nice space to spread out, that would probably be what we would choose.
Is there anything that somebody who is considering relocating to Rhode Island should consider that might be different from a real estate experience they've had? Something that we often talk about is that we are an attorney state here in New York.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to have an attorney, or the co-op thing is a very New York City thing. What's something that you would want people to know about their transaction before they kind of jump right in?
Good question. Yeah. So each city and town has their own tax rate. Not every area is like that. A lot of states are county based. A lot of states are based on sales price or assessed value at purchase, things like that. All of our taxes are city or town based. So each city and town has their own price point as far as taxes go. That's always a conversation I have with people relocating. Everyone thinks, I want to be in Providence. And I'm happy to do that. Providence is a really great place to live, but there are also other alternatives right outside the city that offer a really great tax rate at a lower purchase price. So that's a little bit of uniqueness, and people lose sight of how, on a positive note, how small we are, right? If I need to work in New York City, if you're showing me a home in Westchester County, I got to plan in for the commute every day. Whereas if I need to work in Providence, don't be afraid to buy just outside of the city. There's a lot of value, a lot of really great homes. And because we're so small, you're there in less than 10 minutes and there's very minimal traffic. So that's definitely things. That's one of the first conversations I have with people that are relocating here. Taxes always is something that we come up with because people, maybe it's different in many other areas. We are not an attorney state. And so people relocating from Massachusetts, which we get a lot of, they're used to an attorney state, sort of egg chicken in Massachusetts, right? You make an offer, you do an inspection, you pass through the inspection, then you get the purchase contract. In Rhode Island, we're chicken egg. We do contract with an inspection contingency. So there's no attorney writing your contract. All of our contracts here in Rhode Island are boilerplate. So, that takes a little getting used to sometimes coming from other areas.
This has been a really great call. I'm so happy that we had you on.
Best way to find me is my Instagram page, where you will probably find more pictures of my kid than you will of any houses that I sell. I try to pride myself on being someone that is good at marketing myself, but I'm terrible at it. So you'll see a lot of personal stuff, which I think this just makes me authentic. I don't know, but you won't see a lot of gloating. I sold this, I sold that under contract. You won't see my face like on my images, but mostly my kid, spilling yogurt all over his face is what you'll see.
That's the content we're looking for.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's funny. My wife laughs because I'll post a picture of a beautiful home that I just sold. Bob, so happy. Clients are so happy. 22 likes. I post a picture of my kid holding a rock at the beach. 177 likes. So you can find me on Instagram. It's at Adam the RI Realtor. All my stuff is there. I try to be funny. It's I try to have fun with it. I don't take myself too seriously. I know that I'm really good at my job, guys. So please hire me if you're coming to Rhode Island. I promise I'm really good at my job. But I am also unapologetically authentic. So you'll mostly see me being a goofball and posting funny stuff. So I don't have a fancy website or anything like that. I focus on trying to make my clients happy. I guess that's how I can put it.
That's amazing.
This has been great. I knew nothing about Rhode Island when we started, and now I feel like I know so much and I have to come visit. So thank you so much.
There's so much more. I could probably ramble on for years. All I can say is I tell people, they ask how long have I lived here? And I say, I've lived in Rhode Island my whole life, except for a 10-year period where I lived in Miami. And they say, why did you come back?
Forget about that.
What's wrong with you?
I left Florida and I wouldn't go back. It's okay.
I loved it there, but all I can say is every time I visited home, it just kept calling me back. There's just so much to offer here that, I know I'm biased because I live here and I'm from here, but I think it's one of the best places in this country to live.
Well, thanks so much again.
I'm Aaron.
I'm Geoff.
And this has been the Relocation Rundown. We'll see you next time.